400 years, the Israelites have been anxiously expecting the coming of their Messiah. And this intertestamental period is brought to an end with the cries of an infant boy, Jesus Christ. In fact, that's how the book of Matthew opens up. The book of Matthew, written around 65 to 70 AD, shows the biography of Jesus Christ. It's the first of four Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And the theme of the book of Matthew is that Jesus is the King of the Jews. In fact, the author, Matthew himself, was of the tribe of Levi. He was actually a tax collector. He had rejected his calling of God in priestly service and was now, as a sellout to the nation of Rome, was now charging his own people. And God calls him through Jesus Christ to follow him. And it's this perspective that gives us a little bit of insight into how Matthew is constructed. This book of Matthew, written specifically to the Jews, but for our benefit also, is very systematic in how it's written. So it is chronological. It takes us from the infancy narrative of Jesus Christ all the way up to his death, burial, resurrection, and then ultimately his ascension. But in this, there are five major blocks of teachings. One of the most important that we see is the Sermon on the Mount. Matthew chapter 5, 6, and 7. We see the most beautiful sermon ever preached. And then we have a missionary sermon, Matthew chapter 10. We have a sermon considering how the church should act, Matthew chapter 18. We see the sermon, the end times, Olivet Discourse, Matthew chapter 24 and 25. And all of these teachings center around Jesus's intent to make disciples. And that's really the charge given to us. We see Jesus describing a time in which he would ascend, and the mission of his disciples to go and make disciples to all nations. And so what we find in the book of Matthew, the point of Matthew, is simply to tell us about Jesus. From a historical point, yes, but from a Jewish perspective, the book of Matthew shows us the credentials of the King, that he was born of a virgin according to the prophecies of the Old Testament, that he fulfilled Old Testament scriptures. In fact, there are 129 references to 25 Old Testament books just in the book of Matthew alone, 28 chapters. And so this shows us Jesus's credentials. It shows us the crucified King, that he did die, was buried, but it shows us that he is crowned King of Kings and Lord of Lords. He rose from the dead. And the book of Matthew shows us the coming King, that he is coming one more time to set things right. He came first as a meek and lowly Savior. He will come again as the reigning King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And that's what makes Matthew worth reading.